So we are now recording, and we're going to go ahead and do this. So, because we have about 30 minutes. Has anybody ever done any web design work here? Anybody do any web design? Anybody? Nope. Maybe none that I don't. I think if you had done it, you'd probably remember it. So little in high school. Did you do any CSS cascading style sheets? Adobe. All right. So like Dreamweaver, probably. Yes. Um, well, I mean, then what I'm about to say probably is meaningless, right? But in web design, there's a thing called cascading style sheets that help you design your pages in a consistent manner and align things. And it create a style sheet basically tells how things should be laid out, right? And I say that because Unity's auto layout tools are based around cascading CSS cascading style sheets, right? Based on CSS style sheets. All right, so we're all in. Awesome. And what we're going to do here, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a layout that if you want to copy it exactly, you can. What I want you to do really is to play around with these tools and try something more than what I'm doing, right? If that's clear. The more you play around with these tools, the better you get at them. And you'll see that when I'm doing it, that I haven't probably done it enough because I forget things all the time, right? So, as I've said before to all of you, I think you should be better than I am at everything that I do because I'm not making millions of dollars, and I'm sure that you want to. So you need to make more. You need to do this better than I am, right? So, let's get started. What we're going to do is create a simple menu that's going to center a line, right? That's what I want to do. If you want to create something more than that, by all means do so, right? All right, so because we're talking about alignment, right? We were last week, and this was supposed to be corresponding with that, but we're a week off. But anyway, let's first off, when creating UIs, I tend to start with panels, right? Because panels allow you to, they're containers for other UI elements, right? And they don't have to be even visible. They are rectangles on the screen that you can control the size of, that you can put other elements in and then use the auto layout tools for, right? So we're going to go up here and say game object UI panel, right? All right. All right, so this is your panel, right? These blue things are called the handles, and they actually control the size of the size of the element. And these other things right here are called the anchors, right? And the anchors control where the extent on the screen to which that element will exist, right? So that if you have it, they're all spread out here. When they're spread out, that means the element will actually stretch to fill the space that those anchors, where they're located, right? So if you go to the game window and you see where it says standalone, or I don't know what it says for you right now, but it's a resolution aspect menu in the game window, right? To illustrate how these handles work, I can go to free aspect right here. And free aspect means you can stretch the window, the game window. When you stretch it, see how if you look in the scene window, how the size changes, right? Well, those anchors are what causes that to stretch that way, right? If I change the anchors, and I'll put the handles with the anchors right there, you'll see that it stretches only unto where those anchors are, right? I'm going to move them back there. Undo that. Stop. All right. Sometimes it likes to be squirrely like that. All right. There we go. And I'm going to move that back. And I'm going to take the free aspect off. The standalone 1024 by 768 is my favorite go-to size for the record. It's a good resolution just for a standard size. It is, for the record, the resolution of the original iPad, and it's half the resolution of the current iPad. I'm not sure about the Pro, but and it's a good size for a web player. Right? Why are all these UI elements so huge by default? Well, the panel's huge by default. I guess you're talking about the panel. Because it's a panel, right? And it defaults to the size of the screen, right? Because it's just a container, right? You can make it any size you want to make it, though. All right, so in fact, we are going to make this kind of centered like this, right? So that it looks kind of like that, right? So it's going to be a kind of a centered, aligned menu, right? Okay. Let's give me a lag check. I've got 12:29. Is that what y'all have on my clock? 12:30. All right. My clock says 12:30. We're going in the future again. All right. That's interesting. Did my clock just skip 2 minutes? I don't know. That's weird. Okay. I can't explain that. All right. Yeah, mine says 12:31 now. I swear, I don't know. I think my clock was lagging behind, actually. All right, so anyway, we have this panel. We're going to put like 4 buttons in here, right? So we're going to go up to Game Object, UI, Button, right? And it just kind of throws it. It throws on the screen. If you look over at the hierarchy, the button is underneath the panel, right? And I'm going to rename that panel. I'm going to call it Menu Panel, right? Okay. It's good to name your things as soon as you create them. Let's call this button. We'll call it Options or something, right? And we'll change the text to say options. That one's so freaking small. All right. All right. And then the thing about this, what the auto layout we're going to do, it works with parent-child relationships. Okay. Right now, menu and the options menu panel and the options button are their siblings because they're at the same level, right? We want to drag the options button and put it on the menu panel so that it is a child of it, right? And once I do that, you can see how the menu panel I can close, and then the button is subservient to that, right? It's underneath it. All right. We want to create several more buttons underneath there, and then I'll show you how to auto layout them. The easiest way to create several buttons once you have a child of that menu panel is just to click Command or Control D and duplicate, and I'm going to do that 3 times, right? And right now they're all on top of each other, which is not what we want, right? So we want them to be spaced out in this panel, right? So what we're going to do now, is everybody with me? Am I going too fast for anybody? If you need me to slow down, let me know. All right, nobody's complaining. All right, so this is the important part. All right, you're going to click on the menu panel here, right? Okay, and we're going to add a layout element on it, right? So go to the inspector, and you can click on Add Component, and you're going to go to Layout, right? And there's different ways of laying out things, right? You can have grid, horizontal, vertical, right? In this case, we want our buttons to be one underneath each other, right? Very common in like a mobile UI experience, right? Because you have a phone that's like vertical, and you have your menu is very often just a vertical list of buttons, right? So that's what we're going to work on. So we're going to do a vertical layout group right here, right? And as soon as I do that, all the children of that parent are automatically aligned, right? Yes, and that's the power of this, right? If you learn to use this system, your UIs become flexible such that you don't have to rework them for each platform they're on, right? So they're on a phone or they're on an iPad, they will auto adjust themselves to fit, right? And there's a lot of details into making that work well, and so many that I certainly won't be going through it today, right? That's why this is something you should play with and learn how to work with a lot, right? Even more than I have, because you will shortly see how deficient my knowledge is. But I'll do the best we can, right? So one thing we want to do, well, let's get this lot. We want these centered in this box, and we want them kind of laid out so that the spacing is more optimal, right? So one thing we do is, if you look at all the options over here, right? The child alignment, right? You'll see it's upper left. We really want them centered, right? So we're going to say middle center, right? And then boom, right? So that's better already, right? And one thing, and this is where it gets kind of complicated, and you should really read the manual, and I have to reread the manual every time I'm trying to do this because it never quite totally sticks, right? But we want the children to control their size. So we're going to say width and height, right? Boom. What if you have one of the buttons offset? What do you mean? What if you want to have one of the buttons offset? That would be, we'll see. That's getting into the more complexities that I was just talking about. There's no end to what you can do with this. The more complex you get, obviously, the harder it gets to control, right? But let's do something. First off, I want to select all of my option buttons, right? And you'll notice they don't have a component on them at all, right? But we can go in there, add component. Usually, you'll want to do this if you want that fine-tuned control like you're talking about. You want to add. Go out to layout, right? And you want them to be layout elements, all right? and you will see that there's an ignore layout selection there, and this is where it gets complex. And if you do this, you can make some, it'll do weird things, and sometimes it doesn't auto update when in a weird way that I can't explain, right? So but select one of them, and I will try to do this, but I'll say ignore layout, right? So now there's only 3 buttons there because the one option button is now ignoring the layout entirely. And let's see, I can pull that over here, right? If I come back in there and say, take that out, it pops back in. I have seen it not update like that before. I've seen it do weird things. I think, that this is something that's still fairly new in the Unity world, and I think there's been some bugs in the system, but that seemed to work fairly well, actually. So there are all sorts of options. Let's go back to the menu panel, right? See, there's spacing, right? You can put spacing between the buttons by just doing this, right? So there's like, if you want spacing between them, right? Oops. 10, right? Like that. There's padding, right? If you open that up. So if you want padding to the left, you can do 10, right? And right, 10, top 10, bottom 10. All right. Make sure you name, we're going to name our buttons different things, right, which is wise, right? So options, sound maybe, right? And once you named it, obviously go into the text and actually change the text as well, right? Sound. I don't know. Start. Yeah, I'm going to move that down here, actually. And I don't know what the other one would be. Maybe store, store, right? It's fairly common. All right. Jacob, did I answer your question with that, or you're looking for something else? I mean, I think that's kind of what you're getting at, but yeah. It's something you'll want to play with. All these there's so many options here that I haven't even touched them all. So this is something. Do we have to have our buttons labeled? No. Honestly, I don't really want you to just copy what I'm doing here. I want to see evidence that you've played around with this. So even if it's kind of messed up, right? If I see evidence that you've actually worked with this and played with it, that's what I'm looking for, right? This is really just this is a chance for you to play around with these tools and see what you can do with them, right? You can also, I'm going to close these buttons like that. And I encourage you to do this, right? So let's see. So the options, you can, the normal color, right? We can change the color of our buttons, right? Right. Right. I would suggest, how do we change the color? I just showed you, but click on the button. I clicked on all the buttons at once, right? So that's wise. One thing you'll find, what did I just do? All right. When you work with this, what you want to do, if you're creating a final a big project, you'll probably want to create your first button exactly like you want it, and then get all the things right about it, like the font and the color and all that stuff, and then duplicate it so that they're all exactly the same, rather than having to select them all like I'm doing here, right? But I've selected all my buttons, as you can see, right? And then you'll come over here in the button where it says button, and you'll see normal color, highlighted color, press color, and disabled. So that when you click if you click it, or if you just hover over it, especially if you're on a computer, if you're on a PC, there is no highlighted on mobile really, because you can't tell where your finger is. But normal color is just what it normally is, right? Obviously, and so you just use your color wheel right there. Does that make sense? All right. All right. So that's the color of the button. You can also change the color of the text, but you have to select the text separately like that, right? And you can come in here and color. I need to make it larger there, so we're going to make it larger. There we go. Why is that with the store like that? Right? The store has, yeah, they have an extra line in the store. That's why it looks funky, right? So there we go. All right. Let's see. All right, questions about that so far? Anything that I'm not doing that you'd like to see? So if you played it, I mean, these buttons don't do anything yet. Is that all we're doing today? So that you see the hover, right? Click. It's mostly what we're doing. I might see, yes, to answer your question. But I mean, we're not done yet, because I might find something else to show you here, right? And I'm waiting to see if you have questions about this or anything that you'd like to see me do, right? Because, like I said, there's no end to what you can do with this, right? Now, if you let's see, to show you what happens if you go to the go to the menu panel, right? You'll see how see if you stretch it, it moves with it, right? So you can do that, right? You can make it look exactly the way you want it to look, right? That start's got an extra line in it too, I think. Yep. All right. You want to make sure you don't hit enter when you're in one of these texts, because it'll add a line break that you don't want, right? Let's see. Let's see. Let's look at the manual, see if there's something interesting here, right? So this is a horizontal layout, vertical layout, and you should take a look at these manual pages and kind of look through them, right? In general, you should be familiar with how the Unity manual is laid out, because it is your go-to resource when you have questions about how to use Unity and get the most out of it, right? Because it explains all the different elements that are in that you see in the inspector, right? Let's see. Yeah, use that really. This is important if you're trying to create a flexible layout, right? The layout element, as we saw over here, there, right? A layout controller allocates width or height to a layout element in the following order. First, the layout controller allocates the minimum size properties. If there is sufficient available space, the layout controller allocates the preferred size properties. If there is additional available space, the layout controller allocates the flexible size property. And that can be quite complex when you start getting into it, right? But it does allow you to create UI that it can work for a phone or a huge 4K 70-inch screen, right? So that typically you're probably going to actually create two different UIs if it's that radically different, right? But you definitely want your UI to conform to different sizes of phones, right? And that is the beauty of the system, really, is that you don't, if somebody has a Max phone, right, and then somebody has a small little phone, you don't want to have to create two different UIs for both of those that look good, right? So this system allows you to create UIs that will flex enough to create UIs that look good on both phones without breaking, right? That is hugely important especially if you're gonna do mobile games, right? So because we all know how radically different sizes of phones can be, right? So study this, learn it, kind of make it second nature, play with it. Because a UI developer is, especially in large companies, that's a whole job unto itself. And if you become a master of UI, then you've got an in right there, right? So, all right. So once you've done this, right, I'm going to switch to WebGL making, right? So you want to create a WebGL of this, right? So I'm going to say build settings, WebGL, add open scenes. When you click on your player settings and then you want to make sure resolution presentation, right? See, by default it's 960 to 600, right? We want to change that to 1024 to 768. That's 768, which is that standalone that we've been working at right here, right? And that's how it's easy to remember it too, right? So why do that? Because if you have UI elements that aren't anchored correctly and you work at a resolution that's smaller than the one that you're building for, then you may have UI elements that are off the screen, right? And you don't want that ever. All right, I've made that mistake before. It was awful. Yes, I've seen it so many times. The reason I'm saying it is that I've seen it quite often, right? So, it's the takeaway there is you want to work at the resolution you're going to build at, right? That way, what you're seeing in your game window needs to echo almost exactly what you think you're going to build, right? That way, you're not surprised when you build it. Does that make sense? All right, so it's kind of like working on a blueprint at the size and scale that you want your building to be, right? Do you mind if I create a little title screen to go with the buttons? Of course not. No. If you ever ask, can you go above and beyond what I'm asking for, the answer will always be yes, right? Because that always impresses me. And once you've graduated, the students who have done that are the ones that I remember the most. And they're the ones that when they ask, hey, can I have a reference? They're the ones that I'll give a reference to. So, yes. You want to go above and beyond, the answer is always yes. Because if you want to succeed in this industry, like I said, you have to be better than I am. and you have to do more than we can even put in 2 years of community college. What was the resolution? If you set your resolution to stand alone right here, that is the resolution that I asked for, right? 1024 by 768. You don't have to make it that resolution. Let me be clear. It wasn't anything ridiculous. Just wanted to know things. All right. That's cool. You don't have to make it this resolution. My point is, if you don't, right, make sure that you switch your resolution. You can create your custom resolution here, but my point is you want to work at the resolution that you're going to build at, right? That's the bottom line, because that way when you build, it's not a surprise when you view it. When you view it in your WebGL, if you work in the resolution that you're going to build at, your WebGL will look like the thing that you've been working on all that time. If you don't do that, then your WebGL is going to look very odd, right? Also, in WebGL, you have the ability to actually go full screen. If you expect them to do that, you will definitely want to learn these tools, because if you go full screen after doing this, the resolution of the buttons is still going to be like you created here, and they'll be kind of lost in the center of the screen, and that'll be kind of bad too. So you definitely want to learn how to do the flexible layout, because that's going to help you if they decide to go full screen. All right. So anyway, let's build this thing and get out of here. Right. So I've got to switch platforms, which may take a second. Hopefully not. It used to take a long time. Should have done this earlier. This is another lesson, right? Realize what platform you want to build for, and try to work in that. And it does say so at the top, actually. Right? See, it says WebGL now as I'm switching to it. It used to take a lot longer to switch platforms, by the way. So they've kind of streamlined that, apparently. That's good. All right, so we want to build this, right? And alignment, that's fine, right? We want to create a builds folder. We're going to call it builds, not surprisingly, right? And then at this point on a Windows machine, you want to create another folder. Did everybody hear me say that, right? All right. On Windows, at this point, create another folder, right? Don't build it inside of this builds folder, because then when you zip it up, it's going to say builds. And I want your last name, first initial on it, right? So on Mac, I name it and it creates the folder for me, right? Is that clear? Mac, I don't know why Unity does it this way, but there's an extra step. If you want your build folder to have a name on it, you have to create the folder yourself on Windows. If you want your folder to have a name on it, you have to build it yourself in Windows. You have to create the folder, right? Everybody hear that? Because, I mean, and I understand if you messed it up so far, but in a little bit, in a few weeks, once I've said this 1,000 times, I'm going to expect you to get it correctly, right? If your boss wants your folder named a certain way when you're out there in the world, and you don't send it if you continuously don't listen to him, what do you think is going to happen? And I'll be happy, right? So, this is just a lesson in you could get fired. Probably the first time you won't, but you do it enough, you will, yes. And so it may sound nitpicky, but I'm telling you, software developers and programmers are nitpicky people, right? So that's the people you're going to be dealing with. So if you don't like it, you might be in the wrong spot, right? This might not be for you. Quite literally, right? So you want to become a nitpicky person. You want to be the nitpicky person. So do that. Anyway, so I'm going to name this alignment. And like I said, on Windows, you would create a folder, name that, right? Last name. And then you would click build, and it'll build in that folder. On a Mac, I go to the builds folder, and I create the build, and it creates the folder for me, right? So like I said, I don't know why Unity does it that way. There's something, I don't know if it's something in the difference in the operating system itself that they did it that way. I don't know, but anyway, it's always been that way, and I'm not sure why. But anyway, at this point, you say save, and it will start building it. And once that's done, since this isn't a programming class, so you don't have to include code, you just zip up the build folder that has 3 things in it, right? I haven't graded your hello work. If you're in 113, most people did it mostly correctly, right? Some people sent me the whole project. Don't send me your whole project. It becomes a weighty thing to download. The whole projects can be large, and the WebGL is not. So do not send me the whole project. Again, I'm forgiving the first few weeks on that, but after a while, I get less forgiving because you're not following directions. And so most of you have, and I think all of you have probably done so. It always tends, the people that show up and actually listen to me tend to do it correctly, and those that don't, not surprisingly, do it incorrectly. All right. And the native binary, the IL2 CPP, that always takes the longest. And depending on how fast your machine is, it can take a considerable amount of time, especially the first time it compiles it. So that's all I have for now. If you need to go, it is 1 o'clock. So if you need to go, you can, right? So that's up to you. But I was trying to finish this so that I can show you how the finished product looks. I'll continue recording it, and I will post this tomorrow when just to be clear, all we need for the assignment proper is the buttons, right? Yes, and it should be aligned like I had it, right? It should show that you've used the auto alignment tools, right? That's really what I'm looking for, right? And the more you play around with it, the more impressed I am, right? But to get 100, all you got to do is really turn in what you saw there, and I'll take that, right? But to impress me, do a little more than that, and impressing me goes a long ways in the future. What about the graphic design? Oh, well, you have to do that. Yes, you have to do the repetition forum assignment. Yes. I will post the video regarding that tomorrow as well. Of course, you have the book, and read the book. As long as you think you understand the concepts, you don't necessarily need to watch the video, because I'm basically hitting the highlights of the book, right? So I'm reading some of it to you, that kind of thing, right? But if you want to wait to watch that video, you can. It's up to you. Or you can just read it yourself. All right. It's taking forever. Any other questions? All right, I think it's about done since it got past the IL2 CPP. I'm going to try to get some grading today. I apologize I'm just been awful. This semester has been crazy. All right, now that I think of, just hope WebGL doesn't freak out on me. If it does, try to build a Mac version of it. I really, running a Windows version isn't something I can do easily here, so I asked you not to send me an exe, right? So don't send me a Windows build, because I'll ask you to redo it. If you didn't install the Mac portion, then you need to go back and reinstall that so you can create a Mac build. WebGL sometimes gets squirrely, and I'm not. Sometimes I can figure out what's going on. Sometimes, especially remotely, it's hard to do. To run it in Firefox, you do have to change some settings, and I can send those to you. I need to do that anyway. So if you're having problems running it, they don't run in every browser. Firefox is really the only one now I think that does, and you have to change some settings just to do that. WebGL bugged out on me a lot last semester. Like I said, it's been problematic. The problem is that overall it's the best cross-platform solution because I can run it directly in a browser, and I'm grading in a browser, so it makes my grading workflow a lot easier. And this build is taking forever, but anyway, like I said, if you need to go, you can. I'm actually going to pause this recording. So here is this is what a WebGL build looks like, right? It has 3 things in there: a build folder, a template data folder, and an index.html. You will zip up the outer folder, this one that says your last name underscore and alignment, right? You're going to zip that up, compress that, and that is what you send to me. Do not send me just one of these things in here, right? Because I can't do anything with just one of those. I just can't. There's nothing to be done about that, right? So this zip folder is what you'll send me. All right. Now I'll stop recording.